There are three certainties in life: death, taxes, and Pro Tools. Now, when I was a whippersnapper about 10, 15 years ago, when the whole world was starting to adopt Pro Tools, you would go into dubbing theatres and they'd use systems like Pyramix or Sadie, Nuendo even. But gradually, over time, Pro Tools has become the dominant force. All roads end at Pro Tools. And whilst there may be alternatives for your workflow, there will be a point at your career in which you will be sat in front of Pro Tools, I guarantee it. I often, when meeting students, say that of the multitude of things that you can learn, I would say Pro Tools and doing business plans are absolutely crucial. Now, many of you have noticed that I've got a new screen, and that's because I've got a new computer. So I thought I'd take you through my workflow using this new environment, but also how I synchronize Logic, Pro Tools, and work between the two DAWs. The Mac I've now got is one of these, bought for me by Spitfire, I may hasten to add, and she's a chunker, that's for sure. Now, the reason why Spitfire wants me to have a very powerful Mac Pro is they want me to push the boundaries of the possibilities of sampling so our libraries become as future-proof as possible. So this is very much a business investment. Have I noticed a marked improvement in performance? I would say not, to be honest, but I am working on quite a large, chunky template. You'll see the number of instances of contact that I have. So I guess the main difference for me is it's really weird as someone who has grown up as computers and DAWs have grown up, that it just doesn't kind of grumble at any points whatsoever. The screen I'm using, it's just a telly. And it's one of these, Sony KD48A9, 48-inch. I wouldn't go any bigger than that. You can see that I've got, well, maybe you can't see, but I've got clear sight lines to both my speakers. It's going to be problematic when I convert the studio to 5.1 later this month, because I'm going to have to put a centre speaker above it. So it is a little tall for my studio. What I do love about it, though, is it's the best of all worlds. It gives you this kind of ultra-wide sensation, but also you've got your full depth of field being used. And I'm someone who was used to working on multiple screens, but I've actually really enjoyed working this way. I've just this minute sent off first pass of this feature-length score with this new workflow, and I have to say I'm absolutely delighted about it. What I like about it is it's an accurate representation of our jobs. The underling here is actually the work of a composer. I work and write and orchestrate and produce in Logic, and the all-seeing eye, the Sauron that is Pro Tools, is basically responsible for us as heads of department. Everything I do gets delivered on Pro Tools. Everything I work on gets mixed on Pro Tools. And there are alternatives, as I said before, to Pro Tools as something to run your picture and your cues and your temp and your dialogue and all of that kind of stuff. But there will always be a point, whether it be you sitting at a dub, where there will be a music edit that needs to happen. And if you don't know how to use Pro Tools, you'll have to rely on other people who may not be music editors to edit your music. So how does it work? Well, basically, Pro Tools is synchronized to Logic. If we look at my audio MIDI, use an IAC driver in MIDI Studio, and I think that it's in there, I think. I didn't create it from what I can remember. And what we're then doing is, if we just go to our synchronization setting, we've got MIDI, and it's just one of these things that you can pick out here. And yes, I have got a SSL5 MIDI thing, which I'll talk about in another show. So basically, I'm sending MIDI clock MTC out of the IAC driver bus, and you just need to make sure we're working. This is film, so in the UK we work at 24 frames per second, and we just need to make sure within Pro Tools that that is also set up as well. So we've got our timecode set at 24 there. And if we go into our peripherals, synchronization, we can see we've got an ISC driver selected there. Just put it into synchronization here and just hit play here. There's a little lag off it goes. Now, why do I love working in this system? Well, Pro Tools is fantastic at handling multiple reels. So we have reel 1 starting in hour 1, reel 2 in hour 2, etc., etc. What I love about having it synchronized and not having just like a separate DAW session that you load your cues into is that I can, as you heard there, the outgoing cue when we're checkerboarded. So let's have a look here. So this is the outgoing cue. And there's the incoming cue, and conversely, if I'm going out and into a cue, I can hear the incoming cue. I control my dialogue and effects, and I've got my temp score down here. But also, if we click on the all group, I can then also change between different cuts to cross-reference them. We're working on a locked picture, fortunately, on this one. So, got the picture up here, got the Pro Tools mixer up here if I just want to adjust the level of dialogue, but I just tend to work with dialogue as master, and I never ever move this knob off this nominal position that I like monitoring at, which is, I would say, the loudest scream in the film will be just on that verge of uncomfortable to the ears, as it would be kind of in the cinema. I keep it on that one volume so I have a sense of relative levels. And this is what's great with working with Pro Tools in this manner, is it really does give you a visual and sonic sense of the narrative arc of the entire piece. So we're not just tucked into individual cues in extremis, we're thinking about the whole picture. And by holding this down to the same volume, I really get a sense of, well, I want this cue to be the loudest cue. This is early on, this needs to be a quiet cue. And what's great about having Pro Tools here and directly above is I can cross-reference different cues, different bits of music, quickly polish up on a chord sequence, that kind of stuff, because I don't read music and I don't really have a good sense of music theory. Now, with using this screen, something I've also experimented with is spaces, which you access via mission control. And this takes me to my dashboard, which I can actually just click on by going between the various applications. So if I want to go into the Finder, that flips to this, and I'll just take you through this. So this is my composer window. So these are the different logic cues, and when I update them myself, I go up a point value, and when the director has comments, I go up a whole version number. And you'll see that the director hasn't had a look at this. So every time I go up a version, I put the old ones in olds there, which really does build up. These kind of logic monoliths are absolutely enormous. So what I simply do is bounce out a cue, and I do it in real time so that I can use my external reverbs. I'm using a TC6000 on this score, and then it goes into the bounces folder, and then I copy it across into the Pro Tools folder. So I'll often purge the bounces, and these will just be the current audio files within Pro Tools. And then it's just simply a matter of importing audio. This has been moved over already. And where is it? The Red Caps Attack version 1.2, I think I'm working on. Add. And then that then simply spots in. Boom. Back to my dashboard. We've got my composer land logic file. We've got my Pro Tools land, the HOD land. So you see I've got my dialogue effects and temp scores. Here's some outputs I've just made of the film. So the movie's gone to the director and the WAVs have gone to the various heads of department. And this, very important, is a cloud backup. And every time I update a file, I back it up to the cloud and pull the old one into olds there. And finally, last but by no means least, is the spotting notes. These are just spotting notes at the moment. It hasn't been fully formed into a cue sheet, which then becomes an absolute, it's my kind of Bible for the production. So when I'm working on one-offs, short form, or say, for example, inside number 9, I'll work solely in Logic, and we'll have the convenience of being able to scrub around the picture and hit cuts, that kind of stuff. But the minute I go into multi-episodic or feature film, which is multiple reels, I will switch to the overlord that is Pro Tools to help me with this overarching narrative arc. I think it's absolutely crucial. But moving on, Pro Tools then becomes this absolute beast. You'll see if we go down here, we've got all these tracks. So everything is pre-routed within Logic to basically create multi-tracks and also playback stems. And then these will go into this master session, but as separate playlists. So basically, eventually we'll have a list of playlists which will match these cue numbers here with all of the multi-tracks in. And the reason for doing all of the multi-tracks into a kind of master session is to keep it absolutely consistent. So whenever you hear a piano, it's coming out of that piano track. And then basically what you do is divide it into separate cues and basically import the MIDI file from Logic so that you've then got the tempo and meter information within Pro Tools. It's quite a complicated process. So about this film, what is very exciting, it's the first film that Spitfire Audio has actually funded the score for. And in return, we're able to really deep dive into how I've gone about creating the score. So do subscribe to my channel and ding that bell if you want to be notified the next time I put a bell up. This is going to be a major new, it's almost like kind of virtual ghosting, sitting in, watching how a score is made from start to finish, including all of those complicated processes that I described at the end of creating the score within Logic and how we get it into Pro Tools. So if you do have any questions, stick them in the comments down below and I'll endeavour to answer them. I'm looking forward to a lot of you going, it's rubbish, you don't need Pro Tools, you can do it with this, that and the other. I promise you, in the professional domain, you will come in contact with Pro Tools and you don't want to be a fish out of water when that happens. What I like about working with Pro Tools is it means that I really can kind of use it to a fairly proficient level. And if I need to jump on, whether it be in a dub or whether it be in a session, I'm not a fish out of water. I can actually handle the beast that is Sauron. Pro Tools. See you next time.